and focus on execution of strategies, Mr. Gupta holds the reins of Dun & Bradstreet's go-to-market strategy and business operations. With more than 3 decades of experience and a vast global network of business relationships, Mr. Gupta is an inspiring role model, not only for his team, but for everyone else. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Gupta? So the stage is yours.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody. It's a tough act to follow after the laughter as well. So just a couple of things, jokes aside, I was also an investment banker. Yeah, so I clearly didn't get the spark to become a stand-up comedian, but hopefully I'll entertain you as much in the evening. So thank you for everybody being here. I've got a couple of comments I'd like to share as we go along. But before I do that, it gives me great pleasure to do a couple of things first. Firstly, you saw him, I don't know if all of you were here when we had the session 2 sessions ago, but I'd like to formally thank Mr. Rajneesh Kumar. I don't know if you'd like to stand up, sir, for a minute. I guess you all know Mr. Kumar. He was obviously the chairman of State Bank of India, but is also our International Advisory Board representative from India. And it's been a pleasure to interact with you and seek your guidance and support over the last year. So thank you. So delighted that to welcome everybody formally to the Dun & Bradstreet Business Enterprise of Tomorrow 2022 conclave. As the stand-up comedian also said, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you, the partners, the participants, and all the folks who spoke on the various kind of discussions at the conclave during the day. And we hope that everybody takes away a little bit of better wisdom from the mutual discussion. The Business Excellence Awards are now in their 13th year, which is, given how volatile things have been, we managed to keep this going even over COVID. We had it virtually. I've been in DNB now 2 years, so we did the first one when I just joined. I joined in November, and the first one we did in November 2020. And I was quite amazed by the enthusiasm. So we had Mr. Gadkari, that time he was the minister. He was confirmed to participate, and he insisted on speaking live. We were all kind of recorded before, and we had a virtual event, but he insisted on speaking live, and he also took some questions. So clearly, thanks to all the support from folks like you, I think, we build a good brand equity around this event, and we like to continue that because we believe that, the success of the MSME, our partnership with the MSME, my boss who was here, who was with Mr. Kumar on the podium, Neeraj, who's my global head, whatever we do with MSMEs in the global footprint is, we believe is valuable. And we like to really build the brand equity of Dun & Bradstreet and the MSME Connect. And maybe I'll touch upon a little bit in my concluding remarks also on what we are doing with various arms of the government, various arms of the industry, in terms of, trying in our own small way to help MSMEs do much better. I think the other bit which is very enthusiastic again is that, compared to the previous year, the number of nominations for the awards which we will give out after I finish speaking, you'll have to bear up with that. I guess then we got a very refined gentleman from Yes Bank who'll speak for a bit, and then we've got very accomplished Mr. Sunil Mehta from the IBA, who speaks really well. I really enjoy listening to him. He will be here in a short while. And I've always, we have a lot of meetings and discussions with them. There's always something to take away from him. And after that, we'll have the awards. But the number of nominations increased by 74%, which was again very heartwarming, that despite, what's happened in the last 2 years, the MSME enthusiasm remains, and the number of nominations were so high. And obviously, identifying the winners from among these nominations is no easy task. And for that, again, I'd like to thank Mr. Gopal Murli Bhagat. And would you like to stand up, sir? Are you Mr. Bhagat? No, he's left the room, is it? And you are Mr. Prabhakar Dalal. So thank you for your help in being part of the jury. Mr. Bhagat was sitting behind you, I guess. He's left the room, who was Deputy CEO of the IBA. And the third gentleman who's not here, Mr. Parag Parekh, who's the CEO of Adani Total Gas, and thank you for your time in pulling the winners from all the nominations which we had. So maybe I'll just run through some of the comments I have here and then maybe speak a little bit extempo on some of the things we are seeing more near term. A lot of the discussions have happened, a lot of numbers have been mentioned about, how many micro, and so I won't talk about all of that. But again, what is heartwarming from where we sit and look at the industry, look at the ecosystem globally, despite all the challenges, the risk folks spoke about in their session, is that, the Indian startup ecosystem has become the third largest in the world. And I guess this morning we had a couple of meetings, as I was mentioning, Neeraj, who's my boss, is in town, so we met a couple of people yesterday, today. And I guess the common theme, and these are fairly serious decision makers in the industry, the saving grace, I think, for all of us will be the startup ecosystem. If that is able to kick real wealth into the system and distribute that back out, as it has done in many other parts of the world, it'll be a game changer in many ways. So India has the third largest ecosystem. What we define as the established business entrepreneurship rate, which is the percentage of population that owns an active business for close to 4 years, is a very healthy number, close to 10%. And that's much higher than most other countries in the world. In Dun & Bradstreet, we have this concept of the Duns number. All of you familiar with that? No. So Duns number is nothing but a unique identifier which we give to every physical location of every company. So if a company has 10 locations, we'll have a 10 Duns number for it. And that's how we collect our data. So some genius thought of this concept, it's no different than a PAN or Aadhaar now, but somebody in Dun & Bradstreet thought of it nearly a century ago. And that's how we've been collecting data. And globally, we have now what we call Dunsified 500 million entities. So that's a very large number, right? So we have got 500 million entities in our data cloud. And we try to collect our best possible way, fulfilling every kind of regulation and country guideline. We try to collect data on these 500 million entities. And in India, we are now up to something like 26 million Dunsified universe. Again, that's a very high number. Because as you guys know, the Udyam number, which the government gives out, is approximately around, they've given around 10 million numbers. So we are at 26. So, there is obviously we don't have data on all data on all the 26, but we believe we have good data on a large number of this 26. My colleagues in China, where also we run a very healthy business, they are at something like 81 million entities which are Dunsified. China has nearly 5 times our GDP, so that gives me the sense that, we are at a good number of 26 million. The government, however, says that, we have around 97 million entities. Now, a lot of these are folks who really don't have a permanent establishment. It's somebody making some food at home and selling it, and that the government counts as a viable business, which is right, but they don't have a permanent establishment. So we believe that, we are quite high in terms of this number of 26 million, where we believe we can give some analytics, we can give some data, we can give some insights as to what's happening in the various segments in MSMEs, various clusters, and really help policy making, help the government kind of look at directions and how to support the industry. So the Indian ecosystem, 97 or whatever number you believe, third largest startup ecosystem, very high percentage of established entrepreneurship rate. And then obviously, I think a lot of the people talked about the number of, registrations which happen on a daily basis. And that's, again, a very good sign. That's close to 600 businesses get registered every day. Neeraj mentioned about, the Nordic countries. The Nordic population, as you guys know, is 5-6 million each country, right? Sweden is 5 million. Norway is another 5. Mr. Kumar went there a couple of months ago, and Finland is another 5, right? So these countries add up to one less than Bombay population. And the startup number which Neeraj gave, which I also did not know, is a very high number for that size of population. So I guess the startup ecosystem, the build out is very, very important. My colleague Arun, in his summary comments in the session, talked about, this whole big universe of companies. And I think one of the speakers in the previous session talked about also that, a large number, 95% of that really is on the micro end. And a very few small number is really at the top end in the new definition, really 1%. And the challenge for all of us is, how do we help these guys get larger, bigger, more global, and do a lot more with the external world, either domestically or externally through exports. And obviously as Dun & Bradstreet, we have products, we have services, we have insights which can help people do that. The two biggest challenges, and I'm preaching to the converted really, as an MSME, the biggest challenge you have is just getting visible and credible. Nobody knows you. How do you stand out? So, that's how Dun & Bradstreet started out, that, we will give you a DUNS number, and we have various products like the DUNS registered seal, which give you visibility and which give you credibility, because then you can be looked at. If, for example, if you are a transformer manufacturer up in Hyderabad, and I'll tell you the reason why I took this example, who possibly Siemens wants to deal with, when Siemens is looking at it, you will possibly be there in our database with your products and things of that kind. So visibility, credibility is the biggest thing, and that's why these 500 million companies have a DUNS number. And the second biggest thing obviously is, how do I access markets? How do I get clients? And we obviously, through all this data which we collect, we're able to give you insights as to, how do you find a new client? How do you find a new supplier? Or whatever else through the linkages we provide through our data. And the third thing obviously is the biggest problem which you've been talking about for the last 2 hours or so, is how do you access capital? How do you get access to capital? How do you approach a risky equity investor, or you approach a debt provider, be it a bank or an NBFC? And again, then our scores and our insights and our data helps you do that. So some people have done that better. I mean, there was a discussion a little bit on China. I've got a data point here. When you talk of mainland China in, mid-90s, maybe early 90s, we were pretty much the same size. But mid-90s, the Chinese had 3 companies in the Fortune Global 500. India had 1. Does anybody know who the one was? It was Indian Oil, actually. And when you cut to this year, China has approximately 140 companies in the Fortune Global 500, while India has still in the single digits. So growth is all important. That drives us. I think the sessions talked about growth, being able to grow bigger, you're able to pay people better, you're able to do better things, you can price yourself better, you can get better terms. I think the example you gave that, a bigger guy gets paid on time, while a smaller guy is always trying to play at the margins. So maybe with that, there is obviously a lot of help available from folks like us. But maybe a couple of things, I can tell you about what we've been trying to do in the near term to help the MSME world in India more. So last year, around 18 months ago, we were talking to the government, and there really is no proper MSME index which the government had or could rely on. So we created one with alongside ASSOCHAM. So there's a DNB ASSOCHAM, SME Business Confidence Index, which actually we put out every quarter. I don't know if, are any of you members of ASSOCHAM? No? You are one? So ASSOCHAM then kind of gives us data on its members, on a large number of members on a quarterly basis. In fact, we are very keen to reach out and also do some kind of callback and discussion, and then we obviously compute that, analyze that, and we give those inputs to the government as to what's happening in the broader sector. And maybe I'll touch upon maybe some of those recent findings, which are not so good. So the recent findings being that, the confidence of the MSMEs in terms of the outlook is a little negative than it was last quarter. And more worrying, one of the questions we like to ask is, what is your outlook on your exports for the exporters? That's fallen off a lot. And that's fallen off a lot because of what's happening in the wider world, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in interest rates in most countries, what's happening in the conflict and the cost of energy, and the likelihood of people having, I guess, money to do capex or to spend with the holiday season coming up. So we would love to work with, more participants, more MSMEs to get that feedback, so we're able to provide that input in terms of better policy making, better direction as to what things need to be done. The second thing, again, one of the conversations, the question was on ESG. Now, there are some things, as Neeraj said, you can will away, and some things you cannot will away. I mean, ESG, unfortunately, you cannot will away. And the reason why you can't will it away is because when money talks, all of us have to listen, right? So there's $40 trillion, it's a lot of money, which is getting invested on the back of, some kind of ESG scoring, ESG indication scores, or ESG indexation or whatever. So ESG is very important. So we picked on that as something which, again, an MSME can use and stand out, and getting that kind of ESG certification or ESG credibility helps you then go talk to a Siemens. So we recently launched a product which is, we call it the ESG registered solution. And the first person who took it, we launched it actually, today is Monday, we launched it on Thursday. The first person who took it is this transformer manufacturer in Hyderabad, who's basically believes that by showing himself as a better ESG partner, he can deal with a Siemens or he can deal with whoever else. So ESG is very important, guys. I mean, whatever we want to make of it, your some sense on your carbon footprint, the whole emission, environment is really emission, really. The whole social bit around it, which in India, I think we've sorted out a lot, child labor and stuff like that, which was issues in Bangladesh and stuff, elements of it. I'm just picking up a few. And obviously the governance bit is very difficult to do in MSME, but as you build out, it's very important as well. So with SIDBI, we've partnered to do a lot of work on the ESG framework. If you guys, sorry, I should have said it before, we also own a 37.5% stake in a rating agency, SMERA, which some of you may have dealt with. Have you guys dealt with SMERA? No? So SMERA is one of the 6 rating agencies, it's a regulated industry. You need to have a license to be a rating agency. We own 37.5%, and SIDBI owns 37.5%, and some of the banks own the remaining. So with SIDBI, we have done a lot of work on ESG. We actually did 2 large kind of conclaves with them, one for their clients in Coimbatore. Coimbatore is a very big kind of SME cluster, and SIDBI has a lot of relationships there. They had close to pretty much 300 MSMEs in the room, very keen to do ESG because very important for the goods which are produced in Coimbatore. And we did one up in Faridabad again, very heavy engineering, and they again need to do a lot around ESG to be of interest to their clients. So again, I would urge that ESG, you keep that at the back of the mind. There are 100 other problems you have, but keep it at the back of your mind because you really need to focus on that as time goes on. And if you can demonstrate yourself as a better ESG citizen, you will have a much better audience with your customers who you deal with. For example, in Europe, it's just the ESG EU regulation you have to do. There's no run away from it. Yeah. So keep that in the back of your mind. The other thing really was the work we've done on your behalf on delayed payments. That is just I think we need to live with this in this country. So we came out with a paper on delayed payments last year. It's available on the web. It was released by actually the minister, Narayan Rane. And basically all of us know what that means, right? We say, we did the quantification around it. 6% of GDP, which is around, close to $200 billion, is held up in delayed payments. So that's a very large number, right? And the culprits, the biggest guys are the culprits. And there's a lot of discussion going on in the government as to how to force people to disclose more if they have not paid on time. Actually, some of the bureaucrats have very strong opinions on how disclosure should be done for the benefit of the MSMEs. And I think that is again something in partnership if we are able to push, that would be a huge relief in terms of just cash flow management and how business can be managed, because one understands that the suffering is only on one end of the rainbow. The other end really just kind of keeps it going for a while. So we've done a lot of that. We continue to work on that. We're looking to come out with another paper next year as an update on the delayed payments, which we believe will get again the credibility. There is also a discussion with the Prime Minister's office that Mr. Modi will bring this up in his whatever he has, the Chai Pe Charcha which he has and things of that kind, urging large companies to pay people on time. We are members of CII. So yesterday there was a Sanjeev Bajaj, the president of CII this year. There was email from Sanjeev Bajaj to every CI member saying that, guys, you need to pay your people on time. So I hope it will really help in terms of bringing the discussion much more in the open. The other interesting thing I wanted to share with you, the last thing really, is in terms of, our database is global. Again, we are able to see who's looking at whom. And again, we see a very distinct marked change in that. So before the pandemic, for the Indian market, I'm talking about checks done from outside. These are external people looking at India. Close to 90% of the checks used to come, you guess it, from where? From the US. The US is, whatever you say, it is the $30 trillion monster in terms of GDP size. 90% of the checks on Indian companies, and a large number of the checks which are done on Indian companies are done on SMEs. Because the big guys, they know, right? They know TCS. They don't need to do a check on TCS, although some people do. We'll be surprised how many checks are done on large companies as well. But the large number of percentage-wise checks are done, it was the US. Post the pandemic, surprise, surprise, that, that number has changed a lot from Europe. So again, just shows that how Europe is looking at, possibly doing more with this country, possibly what's happening with China, what's happening with COVID. People want to have other sources of suppliers. They want to deal with other markets. So the European checks, the rest of the world checks, if I can call it, the 90% of the US has gone down to 75%, and the 25% is from elsewhere. So again, as a country, that's a good sign, because you've got a lot more people interested in doing business with you and doing meaningful business, because they have to pay for this, right? This is not free. So I think those are some of the thoughts I wanted to share. And the only thing I would say, as I always say, that this all sounds very daunting and complex, but believe me, there is a lot of help available. Folks like us, there are other folks like us. There is data available, there's products available, we have various services, and surprisingly, these don't cost a lot. It's, I think, a little bit of a mental block which we have, that we are a little bit in our own domain. There is not much help. We have lots of products which can help you in your reach out as you build your business. So thank you for being here today again. And I saw Mr. Mehta walk in as well. So maybe I'll yield the floor to the next speaker from Yes Bank. I guess the MC will come in. But thank you for your time. Please do stay for the awards. Please do join us for the dinner later, and hopefully you'll get a conversation with all of us and we will get to know each other better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for all those insights. Such a powerful session. I'm sure the audience is enjoying. Can we have a huge round of applause? We now proceed to the next segment, the session by our presenting partner, Yes Bank. May I now request Mr. Dhawan Shah